Rain had been falling for so long that the streetlights outside the apartment building looked tired. Every window held a different kind of loneliness. On the 4th floor, Mara Vale stood barefoot in her kitchen at 2:13 in the morning, holding a dull bread knife in one hand and pressing her other palm over her son's mouth so he would remember to stay quiet. Someone was outside their door, not knocking, not speaking, just standing there long enough for the old hallway floor to creak under his weight. Eli's small fingers tightened around her wrist. He was 8 years old, warm from sleep, wearing a faded blue hoodie 2 sizes too big. His eyes asked the question she could not answer. Mara looked toward the deadbolt and saw the shadow beneath the door shift. Then came a sound from farther down the hallway. A soft step. Slow. Certain. The man outside Mara's door stopped moving. Eli stopped breathing against her hand. Mara heard a voice, low enough to almost vanish into the rain. Walk away. No anger. No threat dressed up for show. Just a quiet order from a man who sounded like he had never needed to repeat himself. The shadow beneath her door disappeared. Then another. Then nothing. Mara waited until her arm began to ache. When she finally leaned toward the peephole, the hallway was empty, except for one man standing under the broken ceiling light. Tall, dark coat wet at the shoulders, hands loose at his sides. He turned his head slightly, and even through the warped glass, Mara knew who he was. Everyone in that part of the city knew Adrian Voss. They knew the cars that slowed when he crossed a street. They knew the men who lowered their eyes when he entered a room. They knew he had buried entire crews without raising his voice. And they knew one rule about him: passed through laundromats, diners, back rooms, and emergency waiting areas like a prayer people were afraid to say too loudly. Adrian Voss never touched innocence. Women, children, civilians who had nothing to do with the blood economy, men like him built in the dark. It was the only mercy anyone trusted from him. Mara had heard that rule before, and still she backed away from the door with her son against her stomach. Because mercy from a man like that did not make him safe. It only meant he had chosen where the violence stopped. Outside, Adrian looked once at her door. He did not knock. He did not explain. He only reached up, twisted the loose hallway bulb until it came back to life, and walked toward the stairs. Eli pulled Mara's hand from his mouth and whispered, "Mom." Was that the scary man? Mara could still feel the knife shaking in her grip. "Yes," she said. Then, after a moment, quieter. "And I think he was here before they were." By morning, the city had washed itself into a dull gray that made every building look older than it was. Mara walked Eli to school with one hand around his backpack strap and the other buried in her coat pocket. Fingers closed around the small can of pepper spray she had bought 3 months ago and prayed never to use. She did not tell Eli why they left 10 minutes early. She told him the bakery line might be long. Eli believed her because children believed what they needed to believe in order to make breakfast taste normal. He skipped over puddles. He asked if they could buy day-old cinnamon rolls if they were cheaper. Mara said maybe. Her voice sounded steady enough. That had become one of her skills. Speaking calmly, while her mind counted exits. Windows. Parked vents. Men standing too long near corners. The apartment building behind them was called Briar Court, though there was nothing courtly about it. The front buzzer worked when the weather was dry. The elevator opened with a metal sigh, that made tenants pause before stepping in. On the second floor, an old woman kept 3 locks and a baseball bat beside her umbrella stand. On the fourth, Mara and Eli had learned to sleep through sirens unless they stopped directly outside. Mara had moved there because it was the only place she could afford after the hospital bills and the divorce papers finished eating what little savings she had. She worked mornings at a laundry service, evenings stocking shelves at a convenience store 2 neighborhoods over, and weekends cleaning offices where men left coffee rings on glass desks worth more than her monthly rent. She did not feel heroic. Mostly, she felt tired. At the school gate, Eli turned and hugged her longer than usual. That was the first thing that hurt. He was not a clingy child by nature. He noticed moods. He studied rooms. He knew when adults were pretending. "You'll come at 3, he asked. Mara crouched to fix a shoelace that was already tied, giving herself a reason to look at his face. "I'll be here before 3, she said. "Same spot." He nodded, then glanced past her shoulder. Mara followed his eyes. Across the street, near a closed pharmacy with steel shutters, a black sedan idled beside the curb. No music. No phone glow. Just a driver behind tinted glass and the slow white mist of exhaust. Mara stood too quickly. Eli saw her see it. His small mouth tightened, and for 1 second he looked older than 8. "Go inside," she said. She kept her voice soft. He obeyed because he was a good boy, and that somehow made her want to cry more. Only after the school doors swallowed him did Mara turn fully toward the sedan. It remained there for another 10 seconds. Then the window lowered halfway. A man inside looked at her without expression. He was not Adrian Voss. That frightened her more. By noon, Mara had convinced herself she was overreacting. By 2:30, she no longer believed it. The same sedan rolled past the laundry service while she was folding motel towels still warm from the dryer. It did not stop. It did not need to. A thing only had to repeat once to become a message. Mara watched it through the cloudy window until her supervisor snapped that towels did not fold themselves. At 3, she reached the school gate 6 minutes early and found Adrian Voss already there. He was standing beneath the bare branches of a sycamore tree, half a block away. Black overcoat buttoned, face unreadable. No one stood near him. Parents curved around his presence without realizing they were doing it. He did not look at Mara. He looked at the line of children coming out through the double doors. Mara's body moved before thought. She crossed the sidewalk fast, cutting between 2 parked cars, and stepped directly into his line of sight. "Stay away from my son." Her voice came out quiet, which was good. Quiet sounded less afraid. Adrian lowered his gaze to her. His eyes were dark and tired, but there was nothing weak in them. He looked like a locked door at the end of a burning hallway. "I am," he said. Mara felt anger rise through the fear. "You're standing outside his school, half a block away. That doesn't make it better." His eyes shifted over her shoulder for less than a second. "Quick, precise." Mara almost turned, but stopped herself. Adrian noticed that too. "Take him home by Maple," he said. "Not Mercer." Then he stepped past her as if the conversation had ended. Mara grabbed his sleeve. It was the stupidest thing she had done in years. Men nearby stiffened. A crossing guard looked away. Adrian stopped, but he did not look down at her hand. That restraint scared her more than a warning would have. Mara let go first. Why, she demanded. Why? Maple Adrian's jaw tightened once. Because the car you saw this morning turned onto Mercer 10 minutes ago. The children poured out laughing. Backpacks bouncing, small hands waving. Eli spotted her and smiled with relief, so open it broke something in her chest. Mara wanted to ask Adrian what he knew. She wanted to run. She wanted to stand in front of her son and become larger than every danger in the city. Adrian looked once at Eli, then back at Mara. "Do not stop for anyone," he said. "Not even if they know your name." Mara took Eli's hand and walked home by Maple. She did not look back until the school was gone behind them. Adrian was no longer under the sycamore tree. The black sedan was nowhere in sight. For 3 blocks, nothing happened. That became its own kind of fear. Eli chattered about a spelling test and a boy who traded crackers for stickers. But his hand stayed locked around hers. Near the bakery, Eli slowed. "Mom," he said. "That man from last night was there." Mara kept walking. "I know. Is he bad?" The question landed carefully, as if Eli already understood there might be more than one kind of bad. Mara looked at the wet pavement, at their joined hands, at the reflection of traffic lights trembling red in the gutter. "He's dangerous," she said. Eli thought about that. To us, Mara could not answer fast enough. A white van turned the corner ahead, too slow for the empty street. Her fingers tightened around Eli's hand. The van passed them without stopping, but the side door had no handle from the outside. Mara noticed that. She hated that. She noticed that. Eli noticed her noticing. His voice dropped to almost nothing. "Mom, are we in trouble this time?" She lied without hesitation. "No, baby. We're just going home." Briar Court looked the same when they reached it, which felt insulting. Same cracked steps, same mailboxes with missing labels, same smell of damp carpet and boiled cabbage from someone's dinner. Mara led Eli inside and checked the lobby before letting him move ahead. The elevator was out again. A handwritten sign hung crookedly from the gate, U.S. Stairs. The ink had run from rainwater dripping off someone's sleeve. On the second-floor landing, Eli stumbled because the stairwell light flickered out. Mara caught him hard against her side. For one blind second, the building held its breath. Then a phone flashlight clicked on above them. Adrian Voss stood on the third-floor landing. Looking down, he had not followed them from school. Somehow, that made it worse. Somehow, it also made Mara's knees feel less ready to give out. "The bulb's been loose for weeks," Mara said, "because fear sometimes reached for ordinary complaints." Adrian looked at the dead fixture, then at Eli's scraped palm where the boy had caught the railing. Something in his face changed so slightly that anyone else might have missed it. Mara did not. His voice stayed calm. "Go inside. You don't give me orders," she said. Adrian's eyes returned to hers. "Then take it as advice." She should have argued. Instead, she took Eli upstairs, unlocked their door, and pushed him in ahead of her. Before closing it, she looked back. Adrian had removed his coat and was standing under the broken light with his sleeves rolled to the forearms, reaching into the fixture as if he had fixed things in stairwells all his life. No bodyguards, no performance, just a lethal man making sure a child would not fall in the dark. Inside the apartment, Eli sat at the kitchen table while Mara cleaned his palm. He fixed the light. Eli said, "Maybe. Bad people don't fix lights." Mara wrapped the small scrape with a cartoon bandage from a box she kept for emergencies that were still allowed to be small. Sometimes dangerous people do useful things. Eli studied her face. "Then we say thank you." Mara looked toward the door. The hallway light buzzed back to life. That evening, Mara did not go to her second shift. She called in sick and accepted the supervisor's anger like one more bill she could not pay. She made canned soup and toast. She checked the locks 3 times. She moved a chair beneath the knob even though she knew it would not stop anyone serious. Eli pretended not to watch her. Children were kind that way when they were scared. At Opt Patruzic, someone slid an envelope under the door. It came through so quietly Mara almost missed it. Eli saw it first. "Mom." One word. Small and sharp. Mara froze in the kitchen. The envelope rested on the worn floorboards like a living thing. No name. No stamp. Just cheap white paper bent at one corner. She pulled Eli behind her and waited. No footsteps moved away. No shadow remained beneath the door. Mara picked it up with 2 fingers and opened it over the sink. As if bad news might spill out like poison. Inside was a photograph of Eli leaving school that afternoon. His blue hoodie. His backpack. His hand raised toward Mara before he saw her. On the back, written in block letters, were 5 words, "Tell Voss we saw him." Mara stopped breathing. The apartment seemed to tilt around her. Eli tried to see. Mara folded the photo against her palm so hard it bent. "Go to your room. Mom now." He went because her voice had changed. The second his bedroom door closed, Mara crossed to the front door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The repaired light burned steady above the stairs. For the first time all day, she wished Adrian Voss was standing there. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. Mara stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then lit again with a text. "Do not open your door tonight." She looked from the message to the envelope in her hand. A second text arrived before she could move. "Keep the boy away from windows." Mara's throat tightened. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She typed one question with shaking hands. "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. Someone who should have stayed farther away. Mara did not sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table with her phone face up beside a cold mug of tea she never drank. While Eli slept in the next room, with a blanket kicked halfway to the floor. Every few minutes she checked the hallway through the peephole. The repaired light held steady. That somehow made the silence sharper. "At patru shaptes prezicia M." She typed one message to the unknown number. "If this is Voss, stay away from my son." The reply came after nearly a minute. It was short. "Then keep him alive." By sunrise, anger had begun replacing fear. Fear could make a woman freeze. Anger could make her move. Mara dropped Eli at school, then took 2 buses toward the older industrial quarter where Adrian Voss's name carried the kind of weight ordinary people only whispered about. Rusted loading docks stood beside renovated offices. Smoke from food carts drifted into cold air. Men in tailored coats stood beside men with scarred knuckles. And both moved when certain black SUVs slowed. She found him outside a converted warehouse that had once processed textiles and now looked cleaner than most hospitals. Adrian stood near the loading entrance, speaking quietly with two men who looked dangerous in different ways. One broad and blunt, one thin and watchful. Neither interrupted when Mara walked directly across wet pavement and stopped 3 feet from him. She had rehearsed 10 versions of this conversation. None survived the look in his eyes. "Did you send those messages?" she asked. Adrian nodded once. "Yes." "Then stop." Her voice was low and tight. "Stop watching my building. Stop standing near my son's school. Stop acting like you get to decide what enters my life." One of the men beside him shifted his weight. Adrian raised 2 fingers slightly. The man became still again. Even that tiny movement carried command. "You think distance protects him?" Adrian said, "Right now, it doesn't." Mara stepped closer. "Then explain." He held her gaze long enough to make silence feel like pressure. "A crew moved into the South Block 6 weeks ago. They don't know your son. They don't care about him. They care about leverage." Mara felt her jaw tighten. "Why?" Mine, Adrian's eyes moved toward a truck reversing in the yard. Then back to her. "Because they noticed where I kept showing up." That answer landed harder than if he had shouted. Mara stared at him. "You chose this." Adrian's voice stayed level. "I noticed men near Briar Court after a crossfire clipped a teenage girl 3 streets away. I changed patrol patterns, kept civilians out of certain routes, watched schools, clinics, transit corners." Mara blinked once. "You patrol schools, I watch where bad men test boundaries." The broad man near him looked uncomfortable. He finally spoke. "Boss." "Dock East Side." Adrian cut him off with a glance. No raised voice. No wasted motion. Mara understood then why people feared him. He controlled rooms by reducing movement inside them. "You said you never touched innocence." Mara said. Adrian's expression hardened just enough. "I don't." "Then why are they sending my child photographs?" His answer came without hesitation. "Because mercy is visible." The thin man beside him lowered his eyes. Something unspoken passed through the space. Rival crews had noticed his limits. His discipline had become a map. Mara hated that she understood it. "So my son is part of your war because you chose rules." Adrian's jaw flexed once. "Your son is in danger because men without rules think children are useful." That line stayed with her longer than she wanted. She should have left. She did not. "Then tell me what to do." Adrian looked at her as if measuring whether truth would help or hurt more. "Change route patterns. No Mercer. No West Alley behind the bakery. Keep curtains closed after dark. If an unfamiliar car stops twice, remember the plate." Mara crossed her arms. "You sound like police." Police arrive after damage. A forklift groaned nearby. Somewhere deeper inside the warehouse. Metal struck metal. Adrian's phone vibrated. He ignored it. Mara noticed that too. "Why help us?" she asked quietly. This time his answer took longer, because if men begin learning they can threaten children and still move freely, he stopped there. His voice lowered by 1/2 a degree. "Then the city changes." Mara had no reply. She left angry. Tired. and more afraid than before because she believed him. As she walked toward the bus stop, she passed 3 men unloading crates. Each nodded slightly when Adrian moved behind her. No one smiled. No one stared. Respect around him looked less like loyalty and more like survival. For the first time, Mara understood he was not powerful because he was loud. He was powerful because dangerous people behaved carefully near him. That afternoon, Eli asked why she was late. She lied and said traffic. He told her a boy in class had traded half a sandwich for colored pencils. She listened and held his hand too tightly while crossing the street. At the corner near Briar Court, she noticed the black sedan again, parked farther away, engine off, empty, or pretending to be. Above them, clouds sat low and gray like wet concrete. At dinner, Eli stirred soup until it cooled. "Mom, why does the scary man always look tired?" Mara paused with a spoon halfway to her mouth. What? Eli shrugged. "He looks like teachers after parent meetings." She almost laughed and almost cried. "You keep seeing him sometimes." He took a careful sip. "He watches roads more than people." Children said unbearable truths without realizing it. Mara looked toward the rain-smeared window. Somewhere beyond Briar Court, men were reading her life like leverage. Somewhere inside that same city, Adrian Voss was shaping violence around rules he refused to break. She still did not trust him. She trusted the threat more. That was worse. Late that night, gunfire cracked faintly from far south of the district. 2 pops. Then 4. Then silence. Eli stirred in his room. Mara stood near the window without opening curtains. Her phone buzzed once. Unknown number. "Stay inside tomorrow after sunset." She stared at the message. Then another. "They tested one route tonight. They will test another?" She typed before fear could settle. "How do you know?" The reply came almost instantly. "Because I sent men to bury the first ones." The next morning should have felt heavier. Instead, it felt strangely ordinary. That frightened Mara more than threats did. Eli complained that his cereal had gone soft. A neighbor argued with someone over rent in the hallway. A delivery scooter backfired below the window. Life continued with insulting calm, as if danger had politely stepped aside while people bought groceries. Mara took Eli downstairs because he had forgotten a spelling notebook. On the 3rd-floor landing, the repaired stairwell bulb flickered once, then steadied. Eli touched the railing with his bandaged palm and said, "He fixed it better than the building guy." Mara opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. Adrian stood in the lobby speaking quietly with the elderly woman from the 2nd floor, who kept 3 locks and a baseball bat. He was holding 2 grocery bags. That image unsettled her more than blood on his knuckles might have. He was still in dark clothes, still composed, still carrying danger like weather around him. Yet he was listening while the old woman complained about broken plumbing. One of his men stood near the entrance, pretending not to guard anything. Adrian took one bag, lifted it without effort, and carried it upstairs for her. Eli watched openly. "He helps old ladies," Mara muttered. Apparently, Adrian came back down the stairwell, saw them, and paused. No performance entered his face. "Your West Alley has 2 unfamiliar watchers," he said. "Use Front Street today." Mara bristled automatically. Do you live inside my schedule now? Adrian looked past her toward Eli. Only the dangerous parts. He walked out before she could answer. Eli stared after him. Mom. She exhaled. What, he talks like a principal? Despite everything. She laughed once. It was short and rough and almost painful. That tiny release mattered. Fear had tightened every muscle in her body for days. Hearing her own laugh reminded her she had not become entirely made of caution. That afternoon, rain cut power through half the block. Briar Court dropped into sudden darkness. Elevators died. Hallway hum vanished. Refrigerators clicked silent. Somewhere below, someone cursed loudly. Eli froze beside the kitchen table while thunder rolled above the roof like heavy furniture dragged across concrete. Mara reached for a flashlight, found dead batteries, and swore under her breath. Then came 3 knocks, controlled, evenly spaced. Her chest tightened. She pulled Eli behind her and approached the door. Who is it, Voss? She hated how relieved she felt. She opened the door 2 inches with the chain still set. Adrian stood in the dark hallway with a battery lantern in one hand. Rainwater darkened his shoulders. Transformer blew on Mercer. Whole strip may stay dark for hours. He lifted the lantern slightly. For the boy, Mara hesitated. Then unhooked the chain. He handed it over and stepped back instead of entering. That restraint mattered. Eli peeked around her side. Hi. Adrian looked down. Hello. Eli frowned thoughtfully. You still look tired. For the first time, Mara saw something dangerously close to human surprise touch Adrian's face. That may be fair. Thunder cracked hard enough to shake the window panes. Eli flinched. Adrian noticed instantly. Storms, he asked. Eli nodded once. Only loud ones. Adrian crouched just slightly, not soft. Not theatrical. Simply lowering enough to meet his eyes. Count after lightning. If thunder comes fast, it's close. If slow, farther away. Eli tested it on the next flash. 1, 2, 3. The thunder came after 4. Eli looked impressed. You know storms, Adrian stood again. I know timing. Then he left. Mara watched him walk down the hall, carrying another lantern toward lower floors. She closed the door and leaned against it longer than she meant to. Eli sat by the window, counting storms. Bad people don't usually bring lights, he said. Mara stirred soup over a gas burner that still worked. Dangerous people sometimes know what darkness does. That evening, the block remained dim. Mara needed medicine for Eli's cough and had no choice but to walk to the corner pharmacy before it closed. She nearly kept him home, then decided bringing him was safer than leaving him alone. Wet streets reflected yellow storefront light. The city smelled of rain, exhaust, and fryer oil drifting from a diner at closing. Halfway back, 2 men stepped from a side alley. Nothing dramatic. No guns drawn. No shouting. Just slow movement that instantly felt wrong. One asked, You, Mara Vale. His tone was too polite. Eli's hand tightened around hers. Mara kept walking. Wrong person. The second man shifted toward their path. Then a black sedan stopped beside the curb. Adrian exited before the engine fully died. His coat moved in cold wind. His face held no visible anger. The two men changed instantly. Shoulders stiffened. Eyes recalculated. Adrian said only one sentence. "You are standing too close to them." That was enough. The men backed away. Fast. No argument. One muttered apology without meaning it. Adrian watched until they disappeared. Mara's breath finally returned in sharp pieces. Eli looked up at him. "Did you scare them?" Adrian answered without ego. "Yes." He took the medicine bag from Mara before she dropped it. "You shouldn't use side streets during low power." Mara snapped back harder than intended. "Then stop making every street feel owned." Silence sat between them. His driver remained still. Rain tapped metal roofs nearby. Adrian handed the bag back. "I don't own streets," he said. "I learn where men become careless." That line stayed. On the walk home, Adrian followed 20 feet behind them. No closer. No intrusion. A shield that refused to pretend it was invisible. Eli eventually looked over his shoulder and asked, "Do you always walk slow like that?" Adrian answered. "Only when someone smaller is ahead." Mara heard it. So did she. At Briarcourt, Eli stopped before entering. He looked at Adrian with direct, child-level honesty. "Are they bad because of us?" Mara's stomach dropped. Adrian did not lie. "No." Then, after a beat, "They are near you because they are trying to understand me." Eli thought about that longer than most adults would. Then maybe they're stupid. Mara nearly inhaled wrong. Adrian's mouth shifted almost imperceptibly. Not a smile. Something rarer. Recognition. Maybe. He said. That night, after Eli slept, Mara stood by the warm apartment lamp and looked through the peephole. Adrian was outside in the hall. Not at her door. At the stairwell corner, standing still, watching the building breathe. For the first time, she understood something worse than fear. He had not started appearing because danger had arrived. He had been waiting for it for 3 days. Nothing happened. That was how fear changed shape. When danger first arrived, it had edges, strange cars, notes under doors, men standing too long beneath dead streetlights. Now the city had gone still again, and stillness made Mara restless in ways noise never had. Eli returned to school. Rain eased into thin gray drizzle. Briarcourt resumed its tired routine of slammed doors, coughing pipes, and neighbors pretending not to notice tension drifting through shared hallways. Adrian appeared less often. That should have relieved her. Instead, it made her watch corners harder. She had begun recognizing absence the way other people recognized weather. At school pickup on Thursday, Eli came out smiling because his class had built paper bridges from rulers and tape. He held his crooked little structure like it deserved respect. Mara bent to admire it. He explained how one side collapsed because Jacob leaned too hard. For 20 seconds, her world returned to glue sticks, homework, and whether soup would stretch one more night. Then Eli said, "Mom, my notebook." He had left it inside. Mara almost told him to forget it. Then the school doors were still open, and routine felt safer than panic. Run. Straight there and back. He nodded and disappeared through the front hall. Mara waited by the gate. 12 seconds. 20. Then she heard a car door shut. Sharp. Fast. She turned. A grey utility van had rolled halfway onto the curb near the side lane beside the school. Side door already open. One man stood near it. Another moved toward the entrance path where Eli would emerge. Too calm, too practiced. Mara's throat closed. She ran. By the time she reached the side lane, Eli had stepped outside, holding his notebook against his chest. He saw her. Then he saw the man reaching toward him. Mara screamed his name. That scream changed the street. The first man lunged. Eli jerked backward. Stumbling. The notebook fell. Then a black SUV cut across traffic so violently tires screamed against wet pavement. Its front corner slammed into the utility van's side panel hard enough to fold metal inward. Glass burst outward in bright fragments. People shouted. Children cried. Adrian Voss stepped out before the SUV had fully stopped. He moved with frightening economy. No rage. No hesitation. The first man reached inside his coat. Adrian closed distance before the hand fully emerged. One strike to the throat. One elbow. One controlled drop. The man collapsed against the school wall. The second ran. Adrian did not chase. He pivoted. Straight to Eli. Straight to Mara. That choice mattered. Mara dropped to her knees and pulled Eli against her so hard he cried out. Her hands searched his shoulders. Throat. Ribs. Fatsi. No blood. No fracture. Just shaking. Child-sized terror. Eli clung to her hoodie and whispered, Mom, I dropped my notebook. The absurd honesty nearly broke her. Adrian stood above them, breathing evenly. Eyes scanning streets, rooftops, moving cars, reflective windows, still assessing threat, still working. Police sirens were already somewhere far off. Too far. Adrian looked down once. Can he walk? Mara looked up at him like she had never seen him clearly before. They came for him. Adrian's jaw hardened. Yes. No softened lie. No delay. He had known it could happen. Now it had. Back at Briar Court, Mara locked every bolt. Shoved the chair under the knob again. Then pulled curtains shut with enough force to bend one hook loose. Eli sat at the kitchen table wrapped in a blanket, though the room was warm. His fingers still trembled when he lifted water to his mouth. Adrian stood near the window. Inside the apartment. That had never happened before. Mara had let him in because pretending distance still protected them had finally become dishonest. Tell me everything, she said. Adrian remained facing the glass. Streetlights outside blurred through rain. A crew called Serrano's Line has been testing routes through South District schools, clinics, and transport corridors. They thought I would respond to territory, money, internal pressure. He turned toward her. Then they saw me near Eli. Mara's voice sharpened. Because you kept showing up. Yes? He did not defend himself. That somehow made the anger cleaner. Eli looked between them. Are they trying to hurt me because of him? Silence. Adrian crouched enough to meet the child's eye line. Still controlled. Still dangerous. Still not pretending softness. They are trying to understand what I will protect. Eli swallowed, and Adrian answered immediately. They know now. That line sat in the room like a loaded thing. Mara turned away because fear had shifted into something uglier. Recognition. His protection had marked her son. Her son had become visible inside a war built by men she would never meet. She whispered, "Then I should take him and leave." Adrienne rose. "No," she snapped back. "You don't get to decide that." His eyes held hers. "If you run now, they track movement. Panic creates patterns. Hotels, stations, public roads. You become easier." Mara hated that she understood. Again. That night, Eli did not sleep until nearly 2 in the morning. Mara sat beside his bed while rain tapped softly against glass. "Os?" he asked in a small voice. "Will he stay outside?" She knew who he meant. "Probably." Eli nodded, almost relieved, then drifted off. Mara stepped into the hall. Adrian stood at the stairwell corner under yellow light. Same place. Same stillness. She crossed her arms. "You knew this would escalate." His voice stayed low. "Yes. You still stayed near him." "Yes." "Why, for the first time?" He did not answer immediately. Because this was no longer strategy. When he finally spoke, his tone had roughened by something small and human. "Because I would rather they watch me near him than test whether no one would." Mara had no reply. For the first time, she saw cost in him. Not weakness. Cost. Then his phone vibrated. He answered, listened. His face changed. Only once. Subtly. Danger confirmed. He hung up. Serrano moved 3 crews tonight. Mara's stomach tightened. What does that mean? Adrian's eyes darkened. It means they stopped studying. The city changed after that. Not visibly. Shops still opened. Buses still ran. Kids still spilled out of schools with backpacks swinging. But beneath ordinary motion, pressure had tightened. Mara felt it in how unfamiliar cars idled half a block too long. In how Adrian's men rotated positions without speaking. In how windows across certain streets reflected watchers where yesterday there had only been traffic. War had not started loudly. It had become organized. Adrian stopped standing still. That alone told her everything. At Daum, she watched from her kitchen window as 3 black vehicles moved through wet streets below Briar Court. No sirens, no panic, just controlled movement. Adrian entered the middle SUV without looking up. For the first time, he was not waiting. He was hunting. By noon, rumors spread through the neighborhood faster than weather. A mechanic downstairs said 2 armed men had been pulled from an abandoned loading yard near the river. A cashier at Mara's convenience store shift whispered that someone had torched a Serrano transport stash in the industrial quarter. Nobody said Adrian's name openly. They did not need to. His answer was moving through the city. That evening, Mara returned home early. Eli sat drawing at the table. Crayon. Bent paper. Qui est concentration? He had drawn Briar Court, then added a dark figure outside it. Mara started. That's him, Eli nodded. He stands where bad things might come. Her throat tightened. Children reduced complicated truths into unbearable simplicity. Et șapte patruzeci M. Adrian entered the apartment without removing his coat. That alone felt wrong. He always paused, always respected threshold. Now urgency had eaten ceremony. We need to move floors tonight. Mara stood instantly. Why? 2 Serrano spotters were caught with building sketches. Her chest went cold. They mapped Briar Court, yes. No panic in his tone. That made it worse. She packed in under 3 minutes. Medicine. Phone charges. 2 hoodies. Bondage. Eli's inhaler. 1 stuffed cloth fox he had not slept without since age 6. They moved to an empty 4th-floor unit at the far end of the building, recently abandoned after a plumbing collapse. Narrower. Body. 1 mattress. 1 lamp. 1 view over rear alley and roofline. Adrian's men took lower stairwell positions. No chatter. No theatrical weapons. Only disciplined stillness. Mara watched him near the window. "You're turning my building into a fortress." Adrian replied without looking back. "I'm turning it into a harder target." That difference mattered. Near midnight, one of his men entered. Thin, watchful. Same one from the warehouse. Dock crew confirmed Serrano fallback. East route burned. Adrian nodded once. Then and Mercer. The man answered carefully. 3 gone. 1 escaped. Mara understood. He had ignored wider territory losses, focused on routes near her district. He was narrowing war around her child. That was not softness. That was decision. Later, while Eli slept on the mattress under a borrowed blanket, Mara stood beside Adrian in the half-dark. Streetlights painted cold reflections over cracked glass. "You're exposing yourself," she said. He did not deny it. "Yes. For us. For the threat." She turned sharply. "Don't make this tactical." His voice lowered. "I'm making it accurate." Then, after a beat, if they believe children are usable leverage, I remove that belief. That was the closest thing to conviction she had heard from him. No speech, no performance, just rule. Then came the gunshot. 1, far, roofline direction. Glass shattered inward. Adrian moved before sound fully ended. He pulled Mara down hard behind the wall. His body turned toward the broken window. Shield first. Impact first. A second round hit brick. His men were already moving in the stairwell below. Comment? Short. Precise. Eli woke crying. Mara crawled toward him. Adrian never turned his back to the window. He spoke into his radio. North roof. 2 shooters. Rear lane cut off. Then silence. Then movement beyond. Then distant return fire. Controlled. Short. Finished quickly. No cinematics chaos. Only efficiency. Minutes later, his thin lieutenant returned. Roof clear. Adrian asked only 1 question. Escapes 1. His jaw tightened. 1 was enough. 1 meant continuation. Mara held Eli against her chest, while dust from broken plaster settled across the room. Her voice shook, despite effort. This ends when Adrian looked at the shattered frame. Rain pushed softly through cracked edges. Then at Eli. Then back at her. When they stop believing I will choose anything before him. Mara felt something shift. This was no longer passive defense. He had chosen territory, exposure, escalation. He was narrowing his war around a child, and the city had started learning it. Just before dawn, Eli stirred in her arms and whispered, sleep thick and honest. Is he still here? Mara looked across the damaged room. Adrian stood by the blown window, dark coat catching early gray light, watching rooftops like a man who had forgotten what rest felt like. Yes, she said. Eli closed his eyes again. Then came the softest line in the entire war. Good. Morning should have softened things. It didn't. Rain had thinned into a cold mist that clung to Briar Court's windows and stair rails, turning everything damp and older. The shattered fourth-floor window had been boarded from the inside before sunrise. Dust still sat in corners. Eli's cloth fox rested beside the mattress, as if small objects could keep routine alive when walls had already learned gunfire. Adrian had not left. That alone told Mara the threat had moved closer than maps. At Obzitja, M. One of his men returned from the lower stairwell. Thin coat, wet shoulders, quiet breathing. He spoke directly to Adrian. 2 delivery vans, parked west side. Wrong plates. Adrian's face stayed still. Same crew likely. Mara was already pulling Eli toward her. How long Adrian checked his watch. Then the rear alley. Then the hallway. Soon. That single word changed the apartment. His men moved without noise. One locked the roof access. One killed the lobby breaker to darken sightlines. One shifted residents on lower floors under false plumbing excuses. No screaming. No panics. Elderly neighbors grumbled and moved. Children were carried downstairs by irritated parents who thought maintenance had failed again. War hid itself inside ordinary inconvenience. Mara watched and understood something she had avoided admitting. This man had protected civilians long before he ever stood outside her door. Eli sat on the mattress gripping his fox. Are bad men coming here? Adrian looked at him directly. Yes. Mara flinched at the honesty. Eli swallowed. Will you stay? Adrian answered immediately. Yes. That settled the child faster than any lie could. By noon, Briar Court stopped sounding like a home. No laundry hum. No arguing through thin walls. No children running stairs. Even the elevator had gone dead. Mara stood near the boarded window when the fire alarm suddenly screamed through the building hard enough to make Eli cover his ears. Adrian's eyes hardened. Stay away from the stairwell. His thin lieutenant burst in. Lobby smoke. Small ignition. Forced. Diversion. Adrian moved to the hall. Mara grabbed his sleeve. Same reckless gesture as before. This time, neither of them treated it like shock. If they come inside, he looked at her hand. Then her face. They already did. Then he stepped out. The first breach came from below. Mitteilslammel. Voices. Heavy movement on lower stairs. His men answered with controlled force. Short commands. Impact. Retreat. Repositioning. No dramatic shouting. No reckless firefight. Just efficient violence inside narrow architecture. Briar Court had become vertical warfare. Mara dragged Eli deeper into the abandoned unit's back room where plumbing damage had left cracked tile and exposed pipe. She pushed him behind an overturned cabinet and crouched in front of him with a kitchen knife she hated herself for trusting. The fire alarm screamed endlessly. Then footsteps. Not downstairs. Closer. 4th floor. Rear stairwell. Someone had bypassed front defense. A shape moved past the doorway. Mara held her breath so hard, her ribs hurt. Another step. A man entered. Dark hood. Compact weapon. Eyes scanning. He saw movement near the cabinet. He raised his arm. Mara lunged first. The knife never reached him. He hit her hard enough to throw her into plaster. Pain flashed white across her shoulder. Eli screamed. The man turned toward the sound, then Adrian hit him. He came through the side frame like controlled force given human shape. No roar. No speech. One brutal collision. The attacker crashed into exposed pipe. Metal cracked. Weapon dropped. Adrian pinned his wrist. Drove one strike into the throat. Then ended the movement before it could become prolonged struggle. Silence. Only the alarm. Only Eli crying. Only Mara trying to breathe through pain. Adrian stood first. Blood across one knuckle. Shirt torn near the shoulder. Eyes already scanning for second entry. Always second threat. Mara pushed herself up. You left the stairwell. His answer came sharp. I left territory. That line landed harder than the fight. He had abandoned strategic control, left broader defense, chosen this room, chosen them. Then radio static burst at his belt. His lieutenant boss, front lane breaking. We lose west if you stay up there. Territory. Men. Power. Position. Everything war usually demanded. Adrian looked once toward the hallway. Then at Eli. Then at Mara, still half shaken against broken plaster. His voice stayed cold. Hold west without me. The radio went silent. Even his men understood what that meant. He had made the choice. Protection first. War second. The final push came fast. 2 attackers from the hall. 1 from rear stairs. Tight corridor. Vet concrete. Narrow angle. Adrian used space like memory. Door frames. Walls. Blind turns. His men reached upper landing in time to collapse the last approach. The hallway that had once held broken bulbs, grocery bags, and ordinary complaints became the place where violence stopped. Then it ended. Not loudly, just absence. The fire alarm died. Rain remained. Somewhere below. Sirens finally approached. Too late to matter. Mara sat on the floor while paramedics checked her shoulder, and neighbors whispered in frightened clusters behind taped stair rails. Eli refused treatment until he knew Adrian was still nearby. The boy found him first. At the far end of the 4th floor corridor, under the same repaired yellow light, Adrian stood with one sleeve darkened by blood. Not all of it his, breathing steady, looking more tired than dangerous now, though danger still lived in every still inch of him. Eli walked over, clutching the cloth fox. Mara almost stopped him. She didn't. The boy stood in front of Adrian and asked the simplest thing in the entire war. Did you win? Adrian looked down, then toward the shattered corridor, then toward Mara. His answer stayed quiet. They won't come here again. Eli nodded, as if that was enough. Because to children, safety had simpler language. Then he held out the fox. Adrian stared at it, confused for the first time. Eli said, "You can hold him while I sleep, so you stay awake less." Mara covered her mouth. Something deep and human crossed Adrian's face. Small, controlled, almost painful. He took the fox carefully. That night, Briar Court was quieter than Mara had ever heard it. No threat, no waiting engine, No shadows studding roofs. Only rain easing over rooftops and a warm apartment lamp in the repaired fourth-floor unit where Eli finally slept without clutching fear in his fists. Mara stood in the doorway. Adrian was seated outside the room, back against the wall. The cloth fox still in one hand. Same posture as the first night. Different truth, she asked softly. Was this why you never touched innocence? His eyes stayed on the dim hall. When men learn children can be used, his voice lowered. They keep trying. Mara leaned against the frame. So this was always your rule. He gave the smallest nod, then added the only thing that mattered. Now they remember it. Inside, Eli slept safely. Outside, the city kept breathing, and for the first time, Briar Court no longer felt watched. It felt shielded, if some doors are remembered because danger entered through them. This one remained because a dangerous man chose to stand in front of it. If you want to keep walking through stories where protection costs more than power, stay close for the next one, because somewhere else in this city, another quiet home is about to learn who shows up when the dark finally knocks.